Matthew, the question I have for you is you've been talking a lot about what Cadillac is going to do with their driver lineup in 2026. I think you're very high on Valtteri Bottas and Sergio Perez as drivers that can give them the experience that the team needs in their first year. You've called both of them a couple of the greatest number two drivers we've seen in the modern era for Formula One. But when you look at what Jak Crawford is doing here, do you think if Cadillac wanted to go down the brand of trying to cater to the American market, so to speak, in their first year, do you think it's worth giving Jak Crawford the call up should he finish top three in the championship in Formula 2 this season?
I don't think so, in my opinion, just because I think if they go down the rookie route, it's not a smart thing. I really don't think it's smart because if you have the opportunity, it depends on how much money you're willing to spend right at the end of the day. So, you leaked our text messages there in the sense what I was telling you. No, but all kidding aside, I think Sergio Perez, and I think Valtteri Bottas would be the two perfect, both veterans, both two arguably the greatest number two drivers in the history of the sport with Red Bull and Mercedes at the time. I think they bring some sort of experience to the sport. So if they have 1 or 2 years left, then you get the opportunity to a young guy who probably won't be in F2 much longer in Jak Crawford, who, as the nationalism comes out as Americans, because in Formula One, we're not very well represented. Logan Sargent, unfortunately, his tenure came to a quick end over there. But it's exciting for us because we don't really see it happen, at all, actually. So it would be awesome if he got consideration. I know he's currently is at Aston Martin. He's a reserve driver over there. I don't know if he'll be moving up anytime soon in that sense. I know he was with Red Bull, but obviously that contract ended, so he moved over. Unless Lance Stroll decides to retire and go play golf or tennis, one of the two I know he was really good at. I can't remember which one he said. And then Fernando Alonso, too. I know there's a lot of conversations on social media with Will Buxton about him that we were joking about in the chat, our Grid Network chat. But Jak Crawford, I think it's really awesome to see. I think he is doing really well. I think he's got 3 total wins in his career, whether it's features and sprint wins. That's awesome. So you think he would be the one if you want to bring that American idea to the sport, or American driver in the sense of. But I know we talked about Verschoor a little bit. He's probably going to win the championship. If he doesn't, it's going to be Crawford. I think it's going to be one of those two. Verschoor is kind of ancient in the sense of Formula 2. And it's not like he's been bad. He's had a rough start, but he's kind of really just took off this year. And if he does win, he's kind of going to be in a weird position where I think there's a lot of talent currently at the Formula 1 level that even the reserve drivers, I think, some of them are better, in my opinion, than some of the current drivers on the grid. So I think Formula 1's getting an issue here where there's not really any more room to grow. So it's great that there's going to be 2 extra seats on the grid. But are they just going to go to guys who are going to get phased out of their current teams, or are they going to bring back people from retirement or other reserve drivers? So it'll be interesting to see. But I think maybe if he gets a couple years under his belt as a reserve driver, continues to be a reserve driver, maybe he goes to Haas for a more American-type experience. Maybe he goes to Cadillac after he graduates from F2. So we'll see. I mean, you root for him. I really hope the best for all of them, especially guys like Felipe Drugovich, who I feel like still hasn't gotten an opportunity to shine yet, and he's been a reserve driver for, it feels like, decades, but obviously it's not that long. So it'll be interesting to see. Want to hear your thoughts. I know we were all pro Logan Sargent. I know someone made a comment during, I think, the Formula One movie for you about some Logan Sargent memorabilia. So.
Yes, I did go in my my 2023 Williams shirt, my Logan Sargent hat, and got an interesting compliment from one of my fellow theater attendees there, which was pretty interesting. But I think the general consensus with Logan at this point, in hindsight, is that maybe he needed one more year in F2, even though he had the super license points, and Williams wanted to put him in the seat when the opportunity came. Probably would have been best for his career if he had been able to go for the championship in 2023. In Crawford's particular case, Matthew, you mentioned 3 wins. This is actually his 3rd win this season. He's got 5 total, 1 in 2023 and another in 2024. So he's already in year 3. We talk about Verschoor obviously being ancient by F2 standards. He's in year 5. If he wins the championship, I don't know how realistic it is that he would be in the running for an F1 seat. Of course, we know with Drugovich, with Teo Porcher, winning an F2 championship doesn't always lead to an F1 seat, and even Oscar Piastri had to sacrifice a year of his career essentially doing reserve driver roles before he got the McLaren seat. So, but then again, Gabriel Bortoleto got the Sauber seat this year. So, it's hardly unprecedented, but it's not necessarily a guarantee. And we've talked about this a lot of times in the show as well. If this were year 2 for Crawford, I would almost be hoping that he finishes second in the championship so that he can come back. But of course, that's the thing about F2. And, it's not like, NASCAR Xfinity, where if you win the championship, you can come back if your team decides you need another year. You have to either move up to F1 or go race Super Formula or take a reserve role or something. You're not allowed to come back and defend your championship. So if Crawford were in year 2, I would say, it would be best for his career probably if he did finish second and could maybe give it one more year. But since he's in year 3, since he's racked off 3 wins now, I don't know. I think, again, you would have the concerns of what just happened with the Sargent situation. But I think, again, if they wanted to put an American in that car, there's nobody more qualified except for maybe you could make the argument Colton Herta. But I think Herta's stock has maybe fallen a little bit, especially with what Kyle Kirkwood is doing right now in the IndyCar series. And Herta finished second in IndyCar points last year, but I think would still need to finish close to the top 5 to technically qualify for that super license. I know he could technically do a whole bunch of FP1 sessions, I think, to get him over that 40 mark. It's the most silly, arbitrary rule, but there is, but it might still be in place to stop him like it did a couple of years ago. But for Crawford, obviously, if he finishes top 3 here in this championship, or even, of course, wins it outright, then I think you've got a serious, claim that you can make. Maybe Cadillac should at least take a look at him and pair him with a more experienced driver, kind of like what Haas did when they came in 2016. They got their experienced driver in Roman Grosjean, and Esteban Gutierrez, I guess, had a year of experience himself at that point already, but he was kind of their young driver, their second driver that they announced when they joined the grid in 2016. So we'll keep an eye, of course, on Jak Crawford's season here as it continues on. I see a couple of comments here in the chat, so we'll get to those before we move on here as well. Jak Crawford will end up in IndyCar. It's a shame that all the F2 drivers will be left in limbo in F1 seats in the future, because there's a lot of politics, of course, that goes into that. It'd be wise for him to look at an IndyCar seat at the moment. I think that's certainly a possibility as well, as Denver mentioned. And Kobe suggesting as well, given the recent history of F2 drivers to IndyCar, maybe Versure could find a home stateside as good as an F2 season he's having. I think his F1 hopes for 2026 are extremely unlikely. And yeah, I think that just goes back to the conversation that we've had this year as well. When you have a series that is designed exclusively, again, it's not like here in the States, NASCAR Xfinity, you have your Justin Allgaiers and your AJ Allmendingers and Elliott Sadlers of the world that can come back and revive their careers here. It is strictly a feeder series to try to get to the pinnacle of motorsport. If you've spent 3 to 4 years in the series, how likely is it if you come back for a 5th that you're going to finally get that call? So in Versure's case, obviously it's interesting because he is leading the championship right now. But even if he does hold on to this championship, like you were suggesting, Matthew, I don't know that it's necessarily very likely that he would get that call. But in Jak Crawford's case, of course, you mentioned the Aston Martin reserve role. He's tested several of their most recent chassis at different points in the last couple of years, and he also has a reserve driver role as well with the Andretti team in Formula E. So I think he's a little bit more well-connected in that space than Richard Versure is, and maybe that could lead to an opportunity in the not-too-distant future. But again, we'll see how the rest of the season plays out as well.